Hey everyone, this is Meg Citri, Director of Quality, and this is the group conversation for the Quality Department. As always, please write down your questions in the agenda and our team to get to it. I hope that you get a chance to take a look at the intro we sent out earlier as well. With that, we will start taking questions.
Hey, Meg. I don't see any questions in the doc, so I'll ask one. And it's one I can relate to. There was a goal to make a synthetic monitoring, I think last quarter, maybe this quarter, and it got pushed out because of a lack of capacity. And I'm not arguing with that. I totally understand that. I was thinking, have we thought about making it smaller? What is the most minimal implementation of synthetic monitoring we can do? So I'd love your ideas about that.
Yes, we discussed this in the issues, and we were discussing how to break it down even smaller. I believe the original proposal that we discussed was to use load testing, but it wasn't really the right fit for verifying the user journey. So the team did some investigation on actually reusing the GitLab QA framework to be the foundation for this feature. And I believe that we may have another way out on reusing some of the page objects that are refactored out to power this feature. Those are the things that come on top of mind. I welcome any feedback from the team as well on how we can make a synthetic monitoring even smaller. Maybe someone from the ops quality team can chime in.
Yeah, we were investigating some other open source tools as well to see if there was something that we could utilize to do the actual user interactions, and then for our side to do the measurements and check how long the pages were loading and how responsive they were and things like that. So we're definitely still investigating that and still trying to be creative in how we can iterate on it.
Yeah, so we already have load testing in GitLab. I think we use, or I hope we use K6 for that because it's an awesome tool. And then it would be good to have more data, but we can start with just the data that K6 does and start with just doing, I don't know, a single request or something like that. I think the only thing we need is a periodic job. Like synthetic is like, hey, it happens even when there's no users on the site and when I don't press a button, like it just happens every now and then. So maybe that's a smaller thing. Like don't write any new load testing tools, just use the K6 we already have, but think about how that periodic job looks. And I think for CI, we already have periodic jobs. So it might be as simple as having a button to generate a periodic job that does a K6 run.
Thanks for the piece of knowledge, Sid. I think we will look into the periodic jobs and see if we can glue something together. I believe the goal is still set for by before Q2 next year. So we'll try to be more ambitious here and try to meet that data or meet that earlier.
Yeah, I think something, even if it's a day of work this quarter, so that we can say that we have a start and we can see whether people value it, would be much better than having something big in Q2 of next year.
Thank you, Sid. I also want to add a call out to the team that we are helping to improve the features. We signed up to do some bug fixes this quarter for the ops area to help improve CMAO and SMAO. So even though we're not working on synthetic monitoring, there's work going on to solidify the knowledge of the SCTs in our team so they are more comfortable adding features and new features in the future. So I want to make that broadly known. There's ongoing work there.
I just wanted to mention too, Sid, we did start looking at K6 when we were investigating, and didn't find it to be the best thing to do synthetic user modeling, just because of the number of click-throughs that we would generally do. But it's definitely something that we can do at a small scale. So that's why we kind of had.
Oh yeah. I mean, normally with synthetic monitoring, you want to test a stream, like ordering a product or something like that. Yeah, I recognize that. I think we got to start somewhere. I don't think K6 is the tool to do it long term, but we're already using it somewhere else. Maybe just start there. And also K6 seems to have a really good organization behind it. So if we have it in GitLab and we use it for synthetics, then we can maybe reach out and say, hey, are you interested in doing a click stream? They might be. I'm not saying they are, but they might be.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think we can swap out K6 later if we find better candidates, but leaning on values of iteration, improving what we have, I believe using K6 would be a small iteration. So thank you for the feedback, Sid.
Thanks for welcoming it.
I'm going to take the sign of the awkward silence as we did a pretty good job at the slides, so information is readily available.
Mac, we've seen in merge requests especially, it's been that some kind of the JavaScript reloading or something seems off. I'm phrasing this in a horrible way. It's Monday. It's my first meeting of the day. But for example, when you post a comment on an MR, like it disappears and then 5 seconds later it appears. It seems to be all kinds of small things, but they're in our most popular work stream that feel kind of broken. I assume that it's because the JavaScript thing is really hard to test, and view router and stuff like that is probably new, and probably we use it half or something like that. That's all assumptions. Any context that you or your team has on that?
Sure. We discussed this in depth at the Transient Bugs working group. The update I have from Tim and Andre is that we need to get better at managing state in our workflows. When a user does an action, we may spawn multiple endpoints or updates, and we need to manage the state better. We saw your feedback on the bugs that you encountered, Sid, and I think an action item for the working group is to identify the themes of these transient issues and then start addressing them at the root cause. It could be getting better at using the front-end components, talking to the back-end components, getting some best practices there. But we are really keen on identifying the really key themes that we encounter these transient issues. That's the update we have currently.
Cool. Thanks for that update. Yeah, and it was a working group. This wasn't the first time this happened, so it seems something that needs infrastructure. Glad to hear that people are looking into it.
Yes, and if folks are looking for the link on the transient bugs, it is in slide 13. That is the last item in the list. I will provide it in the agenda as well.
I don't see anybody else in the docs. I'll do a third one. But then really someone else needs to step up and ask questions. Our pipeline is 54 minutes. And I think if I think about my days as a programmer, I think like most of the time the pipeline fails. You kind of, that is like annoying. And you really want to get the failure as soon as possible. If it would succeed, like I don't care anymore because I don't have to do anything. Like if it fails, I have to fix something, and it's annoying if I already started another task. So we're now measuring the speed in which the pipeline succeeds or fails. Completes, I think we're measuring. Or maybe we're actually measuring the time it completes because it can fail faster. But it's almost like we should be measuring the time it takes to take the pipeline to fail. I'm not against measuring the time to success. The time to failure is more essential for my job as a developer. Can we start measuring that, like the time to failure? It's a bit negative, but I think it's a much more relevant metric. And my proposal would also be like, I think we have these big dreams of how we can run the most relevant tests first. And then like at the ultimate, would you be using GPT-3 to identify those tests? And then the medium version, it would be using like, I don't know, ML to figure out which tests are most likely to fail. At the smaller version, if we just run the tests that fail most often, more frequently, maybe the minimum version is to run the test that failed the last time immediately. Like we can even spin up a separate job for this. We spin up 100 machines anyway. Can we spin up one machine with like the last job that failed and try to see if we can get that median time to failure down? It's a bit just thinking of it, but I don't know what you think.
Thank you for that, Sid. Yes, I recall you gave us this feedback in the last key review as well. We plan to add new PI measurements on measuring the time to failure and try to improve that, move that faster. We can follow up with you on the detailed issue and plan for that. But yes, we do plan to do something like that with the pipeline stats. It's likely that we are in a better state in terms of measuring success and failure now. I think we will either move the success rate to a PI and then add focus on measuring the time to fail and try to move that faster in our day-to-day job.
Cool. So, and sorry for repeating myself. That's what is it? How hard is it to make a thing that runs the last job? That might be hard because you have to figure out like what is like, I don't know, the RSpec path to that last job. That might not be easy. Any thoughts there?
We could run it via artifacts. So have jobs that talk to the last one, or pull up the last job, and one of the output of the job artifacts would be the list of tests that failed. And then it's like a talking domino where, hey, I'm just going to look at the last job and look at the list of artifacts. I'm going to run these tests first. And each job has a job of outputting the list of tests that failed towards the end. So the next job can look back.
So that might be easier than we thought. Cool.
Yep.
Sid, could you clarify something for me? Did you mention that you find failure a bit more important than success in this case? Was that what you said?
If like, obviously, like it should be correct, right? The failed test should represent bad code, and the correct test should represent good code. But assuming that the output of the test is correct, if as a developer I have two options. I get failed tests in 5 minutes and successful tests in an hour, or vice versa. I'd really like my failed test to go much faster, because as I'm developing, most of the time the test will fail. Like, especially when I need the CI to do something, like it's a test and I don't really understand why it's failing. So I keep rerunning that, and I need that a lot, and I'm watching that. I have to wait for that to complete before I do my next iteration. Well, like a successful test is like kind of it's not input, right? I might as well have started my next job because there's nothing left to do. So only a failed test is actionable.
Well, I would slightly disagree with that. Not fully, but slightly, because the successful duration of a successful test also is important when you actually chain things together and you need to roll things out and deploy it further on. So it has a consequence further on. So I like that we're measuring the duration as well. I would like to see it run for 5 minutes, which means, right, it has effect downstream. So I don't know if it's equal, but it feels like to me that both are important.
Yeah, for sure. Both are important and for different reasons. And especially as the packaging release group, I can see the need for fast, successful tests. I think right now we're only measuring kind of success or the complete job. And I think we need to start at least also measuring time to failure so that we have an incentive to kind of run the least successful run the failed tests first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I totally agree with that. We need an equal view on both sides. If we only look at success, we're gearing too much on the positive news, and we need to see if we are missing out on anything. And looking at the last failed test, if you're doing correctly, it could be it's another metric to look at. I do want to call out that the engineering productivity team is working in a similar work stream line of work. It's in slide 15, and the second KR on reducing MR pipeline duration. We are working with the testing group on the test file mapping. So this is mapping the code changes to what test needs to run. Once this is shipped, we think that it will lower the pipeline duration further. And this paired with looking at the last failure could make us even more effective at running the most relevant tests which failed recently in the pipeline. So I think it helps when these things are working together.
Yeah, and I would just add to that. I linked to the issue for dynamic test mapping. The whole goal of that is to accelerate failure. So by using Crystal Ball, we can dynamically determine which tests are more applicable to the code change, run only those tests in the MR, and then get the feedback from those sooner versus waiting for a lot of tests which may not apply to the MR in question to run and finish to get that total time for feedback.
Thank you, Kyle. And that's point 4E, and I added the KR issue as well in point I. We have a question other than Sid. Amanda, point 5. Would you like to vocalize?
Sure. I have new headphones. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, no, I just wanted to highlight that the quality team's been doing really great work to automate end-to-end testing for fulfillment systems. I was wondering if you could just highlight for everybody not involved what has been done and where you're going with it.
This is where I would gladly pass it on to, is Vinci on the call?
Yes, I'm here, Mac. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes, happy to answer the question. Thank you, Amanda, for posting it here. Yes, the quality team has done a great job, especially with fulfillment. As you probably know, we only have 2 SETs in fulfillment. They joined in Q2 and the second one joined in November. So we only had 1 SET for Q2 and Q3, and luckily in Q4 we have 2. So to give an overview of what we have done so far is, as part of Q3, we had initiated within growth as a time fulfillment was part of growth, as to identify the most critical SaaS flows, out of which from a test coverage point of view, the quality team has automated 6 critical SaaS flows. So we have the test coverage at this point in customers dot. Along with test coverage, the team has focused on integrating this end-to-end test with the pipeline. So every MR that goes into staging, we have our end-to-end test running along with it. This has enabled us in identifying defects in the staging environment when MRs have been pushed forward. So that's a great achievement for the team as well. And then, of course, as part of end-to-end test, the primary goal is to integrate customers dot with GitLab.com. And that integration is also happening as part of each flow. So we are able to identify defects that are happening as part of changes in GitLab.com as well. There is more work on that side, though. That's still in its initial phases. As of now, these are the 3 main critical work that has been completed by the team. As to what we're looking forward to complete, especially with having 2 SETs at this point, is 1, continue to grow our end-to-end test coverage. As I mentioned, we have 6 critical flows, and I believe we have 2 more to go. This is the initial smoke suite that has been automated. We do have to build on top of the existing flows as well. The next thing is definitely adding one of the KRs for this quarter is to improve our production deployment gating criteria, which includes of the existing test cases, define what is a reliable end-to-end test that we want to run for each and every MR. That way, if any critical flow breaks, it stops the deployment and we have better possibilities of catching a defect before it goes to production. This also requires the capability of quarantining a test case, meaning if a test case is failing not because of a bug in the system, but because a test case probably requires some added work, then we have the capability of quarantining the test case, which means only 100% of the tests would pass at all times. And those tests would be catching the defects, not a failure because within the test suite. I'm just looking at what else we have done. Yes, continue to add more test coverage in GitLab.com. Right now the team is focusing on customers dot only, but the plan is to also have test coverage in the billing pages in user registration GitLab.com as well. And one of the final KRs for this quarter is also to provide test coverage for self-managed customers as well. These are the high-level areas that we're planning to have for Q4 and maybe moving into Q1 for next year.
Cool. I also want to add a point C. Please see slide 43 onwards. That should capture the rough information that Vinci vocalized. Sid, you have number 6.
Yeah. I want to call out that the review app success rate is at 99%, and that's amazing. Thanks for achieving that goal. That's super cool. And I also just want to thank for the slide deck. I'm hesitant to compliment because it seems like a lot of work, so feel free to do less, but it was interesting to read. And I think in general, like, great work on the quality team. I feel like this must be one of the best teams in the industry. I'm really proud of the work you all are doing.
Thank you very much for the compliments. We'll echo that to the team. In terms of the number of slides, yes, we're trying to tone down the number of slides. I'm actually thinking that we will reuse them in the counterpart group conversation as well. So each of the managers can just have a rotation and copy paste to make sure it's reused. Great. I think we're almost out of time, and that's a good quarter of awkward silences. So I'll end the call. I want to thank everyone for joining and reading our slides. We'll see you in the next group conversation. Have a